He kissed me like it was the most natural thing in the world, and I hated him for it. Or maybe I hated myself because in that moment, I almost kissed him back. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I was his tutor, the responsible adult in the room, the one who should have kept the lines sharp and clear. But when you're sitting across from someone who smiles like the sun itself has chosen him as its favorite canvas, every rule starts to feel like a joke no one bothered explaining to you. His name was Ethan Carter. 19, bright-eyed, and infuriatingly charming in ways that made you want to either strangle him or wrap him in your arms so he'd never leave. I was 24, a struggling grad student teaching part-time to keep the lights on in my dingy apartment, and he was just another assignment at least on paper. But paper doesn't laugh at your terrible jokes. Paper doesn't lean across the table to ask you questions it already knows the answers to, just to see if you'll smile. Paper doesn't brush against your hand, deliberately or not, leaving you with the impossible task of pretending you didn't feel it. And paper doesn't kiss you when you're in the middle of explaining calculus. I should have stopped him. I should have pulled back, scolded him, reminded him of the line neither of us was supposed to cross. Instead, I sat there frozen, my heart slamming against my ribs, my entire world reduced to the press of his lips against mine, soft, hesitant, and devastatingly real. When he pulled away, he laughed softly, almost shyly, like he hadn't just detonated a grenade between us. "You looked like you needed it," he whispered. Needed it? God, maybe he was right. The first time I met Ethan, he was late. I was ready to be annoyed, tapping my pen against the textbook in the campus cafe where we'd agreed to meet. He came rushing in, hair slightly damp from the rain outside, cheeks flushed from running, apologizing with that crooked grin that would later haunt me. "I swear, Professor, the bus, don't call me that." I cut him off immediately, embarrassed by the title. "I'm not a professor, just Alex is fine." He tilted his head, sizing me up with that boyish mischief already shining in his eyes. "All right then, Alex, but you kind of look like one." That was our beginning, messy, unremarkable, except for the way he made my name sound like a secret only he was allowed to say. What I didn't expect was how quickly he'd slide into my life, fitting into the cracks I didn't even know were there. Tutoring sessions became less about the material and more about everything else. He'd ask me about my research, my favorite books, the songs I listened to when I couldn't sleep. He'd tell me about his family back in Ohio, his stubborn little sister, the fights at home, the way he wanted to be anywhere but there. We'd sit in that cafe for hours, sometimes barely touching the textbooks, just talking, laughing, existing in that fragile bubble we'd built. I told myself it was fine, harmless, that I was just being a good tutor. But the truth was, every smile he gave me pulled me deeper into something I couldn't name. And then, one night, in my cramped apartment with rain pounding against the windows, he kissed me and suddenly, I knew exactly what it was. I avoided him after that. For days, I ignored his texts, let his calls go unanswered, canceled sessions with flimsy excuses. Every part of me screamed to stay away, to shove the memory of that kiss into a box and bury it somewhere it could never be found. But the problem with Ethan was that he didn't know how to stay buried. One evening, I opened my door to find him standing there, drenched from the storm, holding a crumpled notebook in one hand and stubbornness in the other. "You can't just disappear on me," he said, his voice breaking somewhere between anger and hurt. "I'm not disappearing," I lied. I'm protecting you." "From what?" His eyes searched mine, fierce and desperate. "From me? From yourself? Or from the fact that maybe you wanted that kiss too?" I wanted to slam the door. I wanted to tell him he was wrong. But instead, I stood there, soaked by the storm that had followed him into my hallway, trembling under the truth of his words. Because he wasn't wrong. And that terrified me more than anything else. That was the night I learned Ethan Carter didn't give up easily. He showed up at my favorite diner the next morning, sliding into the booth across from me with that damn smile. He found me in the library later that week, pretending to study while sneaking glances at me until I gave in and sat beside him. He even brought me coffee, black with 2 sugars, the way I liked it, claiming it was just a coincidence. It wasn't. He chipped away at my defenses, piece by piece, until I couldn't tell where the lines were anymore. Until I didn't want there to be lines at all. But love, if that's what this washes, never been simple. And for us, it was about to become a storm we might not survive. He had this way of looking at me, like I was some kind of puzzle he couldn't wait to solve. And the thing about being stared at like that, it makes you feel exposed, raw, like every crack you've spent years patching up is suddenly glowing under a spotlight. I kept telling myself this was temporary. A phase. He was 19, reckless, still learning who he was. And me? I was supposed to be the adult, the guide, the one with a grip on things. But the longer I spent with Ethan, the more I realized he wasn't the one being guided. He taught me how to laugh again. He taught me how to notice the little things, the way steam curled from a coffee cup in the morning, the way autumn leaves crunched under our shoes as we walked through campus, the way silence could feel full instead of empty. And that was the most dangerous part. Because once someone shows you what it feels like to be alive again, you'll do anything to keep them close. One Thursday night, after a study session that had been nothing but jokes and distraction, he leaned back in his chair, stretching, his shirt lifting just enough to reveal a strip of skin. I tried not to notice, but failing was inevitable. "Alex," he said casually, as though my name belonged to him. "Why do you always look like you're carrying the weight of the world?" I forced a laugh. "Maybe because I am. Grad school isn't exactly a vacation." "No, it's not that," he pressed, his eyes narrowing. "It's like you're always holding back. Like there's this version of you I only see in flashes, and then it's gone." I stared at him, stunned by how easily he could see through me. Most people never even tried. "You don't know me well enough to say that." He smirked, unfazed. "Then let me get to know you better." My chest tightened, panic and longing warring inside me. He had no idea what he was asking. Or maybe he did, and that was even worse. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. We'd been meeting almost every day, sometimes under the guise of studying, sometimes just because neither of us bothered making excuses anymore. That evening, I found myself in his dorm room, sitting cross-legged on his unmade bed, surrounded by half-empty soda cans and a mess of textbooks. He was pacing the room, restless, like he couldn't decide whether to scream or laugh. "You're driving me insane. You know that?" I blinked. "Me? Yes, you," he said, running a hand through his hair. "You act like you don't care. Like you can brush me off with those polite little smiles. But then you'll say something or look at me a certain way, and I know you feel it too." The silence stretched between us, sharp and suffocating. Finally, I whispered, "Ethan, we can't." "Why not?" He cut me off, his voice rising. "Because you're older? Because you're my tutor? Screw that. I don't care about rules or what people think. I care about you." His words hit me like a punch. No one had ever said them to me before, not like that, not with that reckless certainty. I stood, my heart in my throat. "You don't know what you're talking about. You're just a kid. You'll wake up one day and realize this was all some stupid experiment." That's when his eyes changed. Hurt flickered there, raw and sharp, and I hated myself for putting it there. "I'm not a kid," he said quietly. "And this isn't some game to me. But maybe it is to you." Before I could answer, he walked past me, out the door, leaving me standing in the wreckage of words I couldn't take back. I didn't hear from him for days. Not a text, not a call, not even one of his usual sarcastic comments in the cafe where we'd first met. The silence ate at me. It was what I thought I wanted, the distance I had been trying so hard to enforce. But instead of relief, all I felt was hollow. I found myself wandering the campus at night, half expecting to see him leaning against a lamppost with that infuriating grin. But he wasn't there. He was nowhere. And maybe that's when I realized the truth. I missed him. No, it was more than that. I needed him. The reunion wasn't cinematic. There was no dramatic running into each other's arms, no swelling music in the background. It was just a quiet Tuesday afternoon when I spotted him sitting alone at the cafe, headphones in, staring out the window like he was somewhere far away. I hesitated, my pulse racing. I almost turned back, but something rooted me to the floor. Maybe it was the memory of his voice, or the way he looked at me like I was more than the sum of my mistakes. I walked over. He noticed me immediately, pulling out his earbuds, his expression unreadable. "Hey," I said, my voice softer than I intended. "Hey," he replied flatly, and God, it hurt more than I expected. "Can I sit?" He shrugged, and I took it as permission. For a moment we just sat there in silence, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on us. Finally I forced the words out. I'm sorry. His jaw tightened. For what? For kissing me back? Or for pretending you didn't want to? I flinched. For pushing you away. For being scared. His eyes softened just a fraction, though his voice stayed steady. You think I'm not scared too? I swallowed hard. Maybe, but you're braver than me. The silence stretched again, but this time it felt different, like something fragile was being rebuilt, piece by piece. He leaned forward, his voice low but certain. Then stop running. Just stop. And for the first time I thought maybe I could. But love has a cruel sense of timing. Because just when things felt like they might fall into place, the world seemed determined to tear us apart. The first crack came from my advisor. He'd noticed how often I was distracted, how my research had slipped. You need to focus, Alex, he said sternly in his office one morning. Grad school isn't a joke. You can't afford distractions. He didn't say Ethan's name, but I felt it there between us, unspoken, undeniable. The second crack came from Ethan's roommate, who walked in one night to find us sitting far too close on his bed, laughter spilling between us. His expression said everything, and the whispers that followed on campus made sure no one needed confirmation. By the end of the week, I wasn't just his tutor anymore. I was the scandal. Through it all, Ethan stayed calm in a way that both amazed and terrified me. Let them talk, he said one night as we sat on a bench under the November stars. They don't know us, but they think they do, I whispered, and they'll make it their mission to destroy us for it. He reached for my hand, bold and unashamed. Then let them try. I'm not letting them take this away from me, from us. The warmth of his hand against mine should have been enough to silence the fear. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning of the storm. And storms have a way of breaking even the strongest walls. I used to believe storms only happened outside, the kind that battered rooftops and flooded streets. But the worst storm I had ever known was sitting across from me in a quiet diner booth, sipping a milkshake like nothing in the world could touch him. Ethan had that kind of face open, unguarded, like he trusted the universe too much. And yet I knew better. I knew how brutal the world could be. It doesn't forgive men like us. It doesn't forgive mistakes. And it sure as hell doesn't forgive love that doesn't fit neatly into the boxes people build for it. Still, there he was, his leg brushing mine beneath the table as if daring me to push him away. You're quiet, he said, straw between his lips. I'm thinking, I answered. About what? I hesitated. About how this is going to end. He set the milkshake down, eyes sharpening. You always do that. You skip to the ending before the story's even told. Because endings matter, I said, my voice cracking more than I wanted. He leaned forward, his face inches from mine, his gaze unflinching. Then let me write it with you. Don't you get it, Alex? I don't care what they say. I don't care if it's messy or hard. I just want you. And God, the way he said it like I was worth choosing made something inside me shatter and heal at the same time. But the world doesn't stay quiet for long. Rumors spread faster than truth, and soon I felt them pressing against me everywhere I went. The library, the classroom, even the campus courtyard where whispers followed me like shadows. Some were cruel, mocking. Others were curious, speculative. But they all carried the same edge of judgment. Is it true? Are you with him? One of my classmates asked, cornering me after a lecture. I wanted to lie. I wanted to laugh it off, brush it aside. But the truth stuck in my throat like barbed wire. It's none of your business, I said finally, walking away before she could pry further. But every step felt heavier, because in a way it was their business now. We'd been seen. The breaking point came when my advisor called me into his office again. He closed the door, leaned back in his chair, and looked at me like I'd betrayed him personally. Alex, I've been hearing things. Disturbing things. I swallowed hard. About what? You know exactly what. His voice was cold, clipped. You're a tutor, not his boyfriend. Do you understand how inappropriate this looks? Do you understand the consequences this could have on your career? Shame clawed at me. Shame and something else, anger. Because beneath his words was an accusation, not just about professionalism, but about who I was. I haven't done anything wrong, I said quietly, though my voice shook. He raised an eyebrow. That's not what people are saying. And just like that, I realized the truth. It didn't matter what we had or hadn't done. It only mattered what people believed. That night, I told Ethan we needed to stop. We were walking home from the library, the city buzzing faintly around us, neon lights painting our shadows on the wet pavement. Ethan, I began, my voice tight. We can't keep doing this. He froze, turning to me. Doing what? This? I said, gesturing between us like it explained everything. People are talking. My advisor knows. It's getting dangerous. His jaw clenched. So what? You're just going to let them scare you into giving up? I'm not scared, I lied. Yes, you are. His voice cracked, and it gutted me. You're terrified of being seen with me, and you know what? That hurts more than the rumors ever could. Couldn't meet his eyes, because he was right. I'm trying to protect you, I whispered. Maybe I don't want your protection, he snapped. Maybe I just want you. The silence that followed was unbearable. And when he walked away from me, his shoulders stiff and trembling, I didn't stop him. Days turned into weeks. I buried myself in work, in research, in anything that kept me from thinking about him. But he was everywhere, in the empty chair across from me at the cafe, in the music playing faintly from someone's headphones, in the flash of a smile I caught in a stranger that wasn't quite his. I told myself I was doing the right thing, that keeping distance was better for both of us, that maybe he'd forget me, move on, find someone less complicated, less broken. But then I'd remember the way his hand felt in mine, steady and sure, and the lie would crumble all over again. One night, unable to sleep, I found myself walking aimlessly through campus. The air was crisp, the sky stretched wide with stars. And then, like some cruel twist of fate, I saw him. Ethan was sitting on the steps of the library, headphones around his neck, his head tilted back as he stared at the sky. He looked older somehow, like the weeks without us had carved something sharp and new into his face. My heart thudded painfully. I almost turned around, almost walked away. But something in me broke free, and before I could stop myself, I was standing in front of him. Hey, I said, my voice soft, uncertain. His eyes flicked to me, guarded. Hey, I shifted awkwardly. Can I sit? He shrugged, and I lowered myself onto the cold stone step beside him. For a while, we just sat there, the silence between us thick but not unbearable. Finally, I spoke. I miss you. He turned his head, searching my face, as if weighing whether or not to believe me. Then why did you leave? Because I was scared, I admitted. Of them, of myself, of losing everything I've worked for. And did you? He asked softly. I hesitated. No, but it feels like I lost you instead. His expression shifted, some of the hardness softening. I never wanted to hurt you, Alex. I just wanted you to stop pretending we weren't real. I swallowed hard. We are real. Too real. And that's what terrifies me. He reached for my hand then, tentative but steady, his fingers brushing mine in the faintest of touches. Then maybe it's worth being terrified. And for the first time, I let myself believe he could be right. But life doesn't hand out happy endings easily. When the university got wind of the rumors officially, I was summoned for a meeting. Words like inappropriate relationship and professional misconduct were tossed around like grenades. I tried to explain, to insist that nothing had been forced, nothing had been wrong. But all they saw was scandal. They told me if I didn't cut ties, I could lose everything, me funding, my degree, my future. Walking out of that office, I felt the weight of the world pressing down harder than ever. And waiting outside, leaning against the wall with that familiar stubbornness, was Ethan. He didn't even ask. He just knew. They gave you an ultimatum, didn't they? He said quietly. I nodded, unable to speak. His jaw tightened, but his voice was steady. Then choose me. The simplicity of it nearly broke me. Because it wasn't simple at all. It was the hardest choice I'd ever face. And deep down, I knew it would define everything that came after. The night after that meeting, I sat alone in my apartment, the ultimatum replaying in my head like a broken record. Lose Ethan or lose my future. Either way, something inside me was going to shatter. I stared at the stack of papers on my desk, me research, my lifeline, the years I had poured into chasing something bigger than myself. And then, I thought of Ethan, his laugh, his fire, the way he kissed me like I was worth more than all the rules in the world. My future on paper or my future in him. Should have been easy. Logic said choose the paper. Logic said play it safe. But logic had never held me at 2 in the morning when my world felt like it was collapsing. Logic had never made me believe in something as reckless and terrifying as love. By sunrise, I knew what I had to do. I found him on the basketball court behind his dorm, shooting hoops by himself. His sweatshirt was soaked with sweat, his hair damp, his face tight with focus that barely masked the storm underneath. "Ethan," I called. He caught the ball mid-dribble, turning slowly. His expression hardened, like he was bracing for goodbye. Before he could speak, I walked across the court, grabbed the ball from his hands, and let it drop. Then I cupped his face, heart hammering, and kissed him. Not a hesitant kiss, not a kiss stolen by accident. A choice. When I pulled back, his eyes were wide, stunned. "I choose you," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I don't care about the rules or the whispers or the threats. I'd rather lose everything than lose you." For a moment, he just stared at me, like he was making sure this wasn't some dream. Then he laughed, a soft, disbelieving laugh, and pulled me into him so tightly it hurt in the best way. "You have no idea how long I've been waiting to hear you say that," he murmured into my shoulder. And for the first time in weeks, I felt free. Of course, choosing love didn't magically erase the consequences. I lost my tutoring position. The university strongly encouraged me to take a step back from campus life. My advisor looked at me with disappointment so sharp it cut deeper than any words. But I still had Ethan. And Ethan was relentless in the way he loved me, filling the gaps with his laughter, his stubborn optimism, his refusal to let me drown in regret. We built something new piece by piece. Study sessions in coffee shops far from campus. Weekend road trips in his beat-up car with the radio blasting. Nights spent lying on my couch, tangled in each other, whispering plans for a future that once felt impossible. It wasn't easy. Some days I questioned everything. Some nights I lay awake wondering if I'd destroyed too much. But every morning I woke to his smile, the smile like sunshine that first undid meaned I knew I'd made the right choice. The real test came at Thanksgiving. Ethan invited me home to Ohio, insisting his family wouldn't care, that his sister already suspected and was dying to meet me. I was terrified. Meeting family meant permanence. Meeting family meant stepping into the world outside our bubble. But when his mom hugged me at the door, when his sister teased him for being disgustingly happy, when his dad shook my hand with quiet acceptance, I realized something. Maybe the world wasn't as cruel as I thought. Maybe love had a chance after all. That night, as we lay on the couch in his childhood living room, firelight flickering across his face, Ethan whispered, "You know, you never really cried because of me. Not because of that kiss. You cried because it showed you what you wanted, and you were too scared to reach for it." I pressed my forehead against his, tears slipping free anyway. "You're right. You terrify me, Ethan Carter. But you're also the best thing that's ever happened to me." He smiled, that blinding, sun-soaked smile. "Good. Then hold on. Because I'm not going anywhere." Months later, spring arrived. The world was still messy. I was still figuring out what came next with school and work. But Ethan and I were solid stronger than ever. One warm April evening, we sat on the steps outside the cafe where we first met, sipping iced coffees, watching students pass by. He leaned against me, his head on my shoulder, utterly at ease. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked suddenly. I thought about everything we'd been through, the fear, the rumors, the ultimatum. Then I thought about this moment, about him beside me, about the way he made even the hardest days worth enduring. "Not for a second," I said, kissing the top of his head. He smiled against my shoulder. "Good, because I'm planning on keeping you." And in that quiet, golden moment, I realized something simple, something I should have known from the start. The world can take your job, your reputation, your sense of safety. But if you're lucky, if your brevet can't take love. And love was the only ending I ever wanted. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.